Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton with Good Virtual Reality here, and thanks for giving us your time today. In case you're new here, you can become a subscriber at goodvirtualreality.com. Many episodes of this podcast head out over email first to paid subscribers before publishing everywhere. Thank you to my founding members, paid subscribers, sponsors, and donations I've received supporting the production of this independent journalism directly. Today, I'm joined by a representative of HMDmd. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell me what you do?
Hi, I'm Jamie Lockwood. I'm the CEO for HMDmd. We are the manufacturer of wearable displays that are purpose-built for surgeons to be used during many different times of operations in the operating room.
So why don't you walk me through some of these designs? Are they usually open periphery? Are they usually stereoscopic? Give me the breakdown of what these HMDs.
Absolutely. So there are some significant differences between what you would have for traditional virtual reality or augmented reality type of goggles. The first and foremost is weight. So this particular design only weighs 260 grams, which is about 2 to 3 times lighter than a traditional virtual reality goggle. Also, in terms of design, it is completely center balanced. So the optics in the front are counterbalanced with the electronics in the back plate, and that allows surgeons for long, complex procedures that could last upwards of 7 to 8 hours to wear this device very comfortably. The other major difference is its open architecture, what we like to call our look down features. So when you're wearing this headset, at any given time, the surgeon has peripheral vision and can just scan his or her eyes down and see their hands, see the surgical site, see instruments being passed to them. And this is incredibly important, right? So it gives the surgeon complete situational awareness within the operating room. They can see exactly what's going on around them. They're never disconnected from their patient, which is obviously very important. But also they're connected to the operating room in a way that they're not going to get dizzy or have any sort of vertigo or anything like that in terms of wearing a true virtual reality type of goggle, which is obviously very important to where you don't want your surgeon to be losing balance when they're operating on you.
Got it. And then stereoscopy. I wanted to really focus on the value of that. They're dual camera views often being provided through these headsets, and what's the benefit?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have the ability to project in real-time 3D or 2D. And for certain complex procedures, you have to be able to operate in 3D. And when I say these types of complex procedures, I'm talking neurosurgery where they're operating on the brain and the spine. I'm talking about complex organ surgeries, right? They need to have that level of depth perception to see whether it be the vasculature, the tumor in case of an oncology type of case, and or any sort of bony or nerve structure. So we have the ability to project or actually show in 3D, which is incredibly important. There's also a main advantage now to where a lot of these procedures are done using basically two technologies, right? That's used through a traditional surgical microscope, which can be, believe it or not, a lot of surgical microscopes are still analog. They're looking through, lenses to refract and magnify the image. But then there's also this real trend towards digital microscopes that are actually using high-tech CMOS sensors to project in 3D. And when they're looking at those in 3D, they're actually looking at a large 55-inch monitor in the operating room. And in order to see in 3D when you operate using a monitor, you actually have to use polarized glasses, which basically look like sunglasses. And that can actually cause a couple different problems. First and foremost, it makes the image less bright. And second, it also can give what I like to call a Mona Lisa effect, right? Where when you're looking at a 3D image on a monitor, if the surgeon turns his or her head, the image kind of moves and shifts with it. So that can be a little bit distracting. Also, within the operating room, it's very busy right around that patient. There's a lot of different equipment, and to have line of sight for these monitors can be a challenge. So all of that is eliminated with the HMD MD CR3 wearable monitor, right? To where all of that is on their head. They do not have to wear polarized lenses. They can wear prescription glasses underneath them if they want to or have to. And then there is no line of sight issues because the monitor is essentially, half an inch away from their eyes. It's critically important that you have not just stereoscopy, but real, crisp, clear, high definition ultra high definition type of optics when you're looking at some of these complex cases. And that's what we provide.
There are surgeries being done today where the surgeon has to wear polarized glasses to look at a 3D display like that?
Absolutely. That's pretty much the gold standard. Yeah. The majority of these 3D medical grade monitors offer the only way you can see in 3D is to wear polarized lenses.
The polarized 3D gets a bad rap because of the 3D TVs and sort of the failed attempt there to commercialize technology. And VR often gets compared to that technology sort of unfairly. And you brought up some of the benefits of stereo optics where you don't have that loss in brightness that happens with the monitor approach, and also just switching off between looking at the 3D visuals of the display and then 3D in the regular surroundings. It's kind of jarring. People sometimes complain about headaches after, I don't know, 10 minutes or 20 minutes with polarized glasses and 3D displays. So a multi-hour surgery or a big, long surgery with that is kind of wild. Let's talk about neck strain and
Sure.
what the benefits are there.
Yeah. So there's when you're doing these complex procedures at this amount of length, surgeons have a habit of really putting their body through quite an ordeal for the benefit of their patient. They're patient centric, they put their patients first, but it does take a wear and tear on their body over time. Most of these complex surgeries, they're attached to a microscope, right? And in order to get the appropriate angles for visualization, that microscope has to move on different angles and different trajectories, and the surgeon has to move with it. That can pay a toll. The other common practice for surgery is just wearing what's called magnifying loops, which are basically lenses attached to a glass frame that they're hunched over looking down into the body while they're operating. So they're bent over, hunched down, looking down at this, right? That has some wear and tear with regards to their body over time. Even looking at a monitor, the American College of Surgeons actually have published a whole study and pretty much a manual on the appropriate ergonomics when operating. The surgeons are paying much more attention to this because I personally know multiple surgeons that have had to have neck fusion because of the wear and tear of their body over time. You should be doing spine surgery, not having spine surgery done on you, but that's the reality of the profession that they do. It can take a real wear and tear on their body, and taking that microscope, detethering them from having to worry about a line of sight with a monitor allows them to operate in the most ergonomic position possible. Really, where all of this started was around the human factors for surgeons. The most common are neurological surgeons, so brain surgery, spine surgery. Those are the most common with microscopes. When you talk about using a monitor, that is a gold standard for anything that is being done with an endoscope or laparoscope. So you're talking about anything from hernia repair to GI surgeries to even your colonoscopies are done with them operating an endoscope and looking at a monitor. So the vast majority of what we now call minimally invasive surgery is done with looking at a monitor. And then there's a large portion of your more complex orthopedic and brain surgery that's done using a surgical microscope.
Got it. So can you contextualize some of the overall march in care here that's happening? Do you see a rise in the use of these and the outcomes for patients overall because of the use of this technology?
Absolutely. If you look at surgery as a whole, right, there are two major trends that are influencing all types of surgeries, right? And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the first one, which is the utilization of surgical robotics. And when you do surgical robotics, there's where the surgeon is actually away from the patient and controlling the robot at some sort of console or control panel or whatever. And at that place, they're looking at a 3D display that the camera from one of the robot is projecting back to them, right? So they have to see real time. But also, you've got a support person at the patient table, making sure that the instruments are being exchanged correctly on the robotic arms and actually monitoring anything that could go on with the patient. And they also have to have visualization with regards to what's going on inside the body. So there's a separate monitor somewhere around there that that person has to look at. So that's the major macro trend to where everybody is looking at some sort of camera captured image with the use of a robotic platform. And we certainly play a major part in being able to display what they need to see when using a robot. The second major trend is the use of advanced imaging, MRI, CT, ultrasound, the injection of fluoroforms that are visualized under wavelengths that can't be seen by the human eye. All of this, the surgeon is looking at real time in the operating room. So there's this convergence of the use of cameras with robotics, but also these advanced imaging techniques, which need to be also projected and controlled for the surgeon to be able to see and make real time decisions to guide what the robot is actually doing in the body. Now, the beauty about all of that is it gives the surgeon more information than he or she has ever had in the past to do a tumor resection or, some sort of spinal correction. But the challenge is all of those technologies are made by different companies and they don't necessarily talk to one another. So it's a real workflow challenge for the surgeon to be able to visualize what he or she needs to see at a moment's notice. And that's where we think we can play a major part moving forward. It's not just about seeing what their natural eye would see, but also what this other advanced imaging would be that can project exactly what's going on in the body and guide their actual surgical technique using real-time MRI images that have been overlaid and matched on top of the real anatomy. And that's the future of surgery right there is being able to have a much more precise plan and execution of whatever they need to do. And that's done through advanced imaging and it's done through robotics.
Really interesting here. And you're really unfolding why I wanted to have this conversation with you because there is sort of a big gap here between the HMDs that you're using and this fully enclosed VR experience that I typically focus on. It's the overall trend that I'm hoping to gather with you. If you go back, I don't know, 15 years now, I remember Google Glass and going to UC Irvine and various doctors out there that wanted to explore what is this good for while also ensuring that they're not like actually just testing a technology just to test a technology. It needs to have a real medical benefit for various uses. So they take a good hard look at what Google Glass can do and they're like, well, one of the biggest tasks that doctors have to do is they have to go down a checklist of items and make sure that they're checking off everything in the right order. And so that's something that Google Glass was really good for is you could easily display that checklist in the corner of a person's vision and one by one go down the checklist of items to make sure that they're doing everything in the right order and not missing any steps when they're working with a patient. But then there was another use that was like more sci-fi, and that was the idea of like bringing a remote surgeon who might be one of the best in the field in for a consultation and having them sort of like look out the physician's eyes and see the patient and get all the data. Well, that one wasn't really there when I was looking at it 15 years ago. It's starting to be what you're talking about. All these different medical providers need to sort of sync up their data and provide the right information in the right place, present it the right way. And that's why I kind of wanted to have this conversation with you to talk about where those barriers are falling in the near future. So I think we're nearing the end of the conversation here, but with one or two more questions. Where do you see this all going in, say, the next 5 years? What is the overall direction here of surgeries being done with HMDs on? Do you believe most or all surgeries are going to be done this way? And what kind of HMDs are people going to be wearing?
Yeah, it's the question that, we're facing as a company moving forward, and we're certainly positioned well to try and address it. The real trend today is making sure that the surgeon is operating as ergonomically best position possible, right? And that's what we're addressing today. Like any new technology, it's not going to be for everybody, but there's been a really strong response in a lot of different high volume procedures, right? Ophthalmology being a big one, right? Cataract lens correction surgery is the most prevalent surgery in the world. Some surgeons will do upwards of 35 to 40 in a day. There's strong applications for wearable displays for those types of applications to where it's high volume, high strain, high throughput surgeries. The other one is around those neurosurgical applications to where they are on their feet in a very anatomically difficult positioning for a long period of time. That's stage one. And that's what we're trying to address today and have some great partnerships with some market share leading companies like Carl Zeiss and Carl Storrs to do that. The second evolution and the trend that we're really excited about is for years, surgeons have used computer generated images for surgical navigation to put in instruments or to plan trajectories, right? And that's usually done off of one of those imaging modalities that I talked about, predominantly MRI or CT, right? The future is the fusion of that type of surgical navigation guidance on top of real time 3D anatomical video. And that's the next evolution. That will really be the challenge. And all of that is done in 2D today over multiplanal views, but nobody's cracked the code on how to do this real time with zero latency on 3D video. And that's going to be the complete game changer. And there are a lot of people that are looking at it. One of the challenges, you can't do that with the degree of accuracy you need for medicine, which is at maximum a 1 millimeter differential between your computer generated augmented reality and the actual anatomy. It has to be that tight to get through the FDA. You also have to have zero latency, which is another challenge as compared to other industries that are using this technology for gaming or other applications. So there's a higher threshold of technology development that needs to be done in order to have this to be used real time. But think of that potential to where a surgeon can be operating, say they're doing a bypass, a vascular bypass in the brain, right? Stitching two vessels together. To be able to plan that ahead of time and then have an augmented reality on top of that 3D video while they're doing it to ensure that their plan is executed perfectly, that's really going to be the next evolution of precision surgery. And we certainly hope that our technology can play a major part in that.
At maximum 1 millimeter is a really interesting threshold to bring to my audience. We are familiar with positional tracking for VR experiences. We understand that there's certain thresholds like under 10 milliseconds of latency between what the tracking is doing and what your eyes see is what you need for comfort. But you're talking about thresholds that are far beyond those markers, right? We've just spent the last decade in VR trying to just get standalone headsets to provide that comfort of less than 10 milliseconds of latency and to try to get the tracking comfortable enough that no matter what you're looking at, whether you're in a room surrounded by mirrors or you're on a moving train, the headset still kind of knows where it is enough that you don't feel a little wobbly in your tummy. You're talking about life or death scenarios where a millimeter difference means you're grabbing a different blood vessel than intended as a surgeon. It was really important to me to have this conversation with you so I could sort of put this all in context that the things that we're enjoying as gamers or as consumers of content that has been so hard to pull off for just the everyday consumer, and it's still not quite there. It's still expensive. $3,500 for an Apple Vision Pro to get a 4K display in front of your eyes and still have it do all these other things that I'm talking about. What you've been able to point out with this conversation is that we're still only at the beginning here of what benefits get unlocked when you keep pushing the state of the art further and further and further. So you get it to be much more comfortable for long-term wear. You can completely change the medical field. If you are able to establish imagery that gets overlaid on top of a person while you're operating on the person, that also changes things. And you need sub-millimeter accuracy is what you're describing in order to pull that off. So thank you so much for the conversation and for sort of contextualizing this larger situation that the market faces. Is there anything else you want to share about what you're doing with HMDmd before we sign off here?
I just think the one point that I would make for your audience is that what you guys are doing on the commercial side is incredibly important to what we're adopting to medical. We're looking at all the technologies that are being used in those different types of commercial applications, and surgeons and doctors are people too. They're using it commercially, and they're saying, well, why can't I use this in the operating room? This could make my surgeries better. It could make my life better. It could improve my outcomes for my patients. So as we collectively push the envelope, there's great overlap to what's being done commercially, to what's being done in the military field, to the applications that are available in the medical world. So I want to thank everybody that's involved in terms of pushing it forward. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today and appreciate everybody's taking a look at our technology.
Thank you so much for the time. We'll talk to you in the future.
Appreciate it. Thank you.